this afternoon. This is Ollie at UC Berkeley. We're delighted that you can spend the time with us. We are hoping that you are safe and well in your homes, your windows closed and your air filters on. And for the next hour, you will have one of the world's foremost experts on healthy living, who will give you a talk about how the role of technology in our lives and how to sort of put it into perspective and make sure it doesn't hijack everything we're doing. I'm Susan Hoffman, the director of UC Berkeley's Ollie, and today you are joining us with Dr. Erik Peper, who is a holistic health professor at San Francisco State University. He has multiple books, all of which are available both at local bookstores. They're North Atlantic, Random House publications, all of which you can follow up today's talk and investigate further. I understand they're also available on Amazon. Erik Peper is somebody who has served as a colleague. We were at San Francisco State together. He has been there for decades. He has advised me at Ollie at Berkeley in what I call my dynamic aging curriculum. I have sought his advice throughout the 14 years at Berkeley, knowing that we need to pay attention to all those things that are important in our environments and in the choices that we make with a healthy lifestyle. I think the world of him, and I'm really glad that we've got this next hour. Today's talk is called Tech Stress, How Technology is Hijacking Our Lives, Strategies for Coping and Pragmatic Ergonomics. So, Erik, I turn it over to you.
Susan, thank you so much for this very generous and kind introduction. I always feel so awkward to speak after such an introduction because it reminds me of being at a funeral oration where all the people give these nice comments except you know what the person is really like. Anyway, I'm so honored to be present and share some of our concepts on tech stress. You know, even today, as you're sitting here and looking at the screen, you're just sitting and we're just looking at the screen. And so many of us, if we do this hour after hour, and for many, or for us, or for our children or grandchildren, that's how they're now being educated, that's how they go to work, that's how they do socialization, and even dating. And it's really challenging to do this. And often at the end of the day, many people report achiness, neck and shoulder pain, tiredness, especially the eyes tend to get really tired, they get irritated, etc. And I'm just intrigued, how many of you experience some symptoms when you, or at the end of watching this, and it can also be watching, you know, different videos on Netflix or on any other media, that by the end of the day you sort of feel blah, low energy. It may even be hard to go to sleep. Whatever the symptoms, for a moment, if you're familiar with Zoom, there's a little chat button. At the bottom of the screen it has chat. If you click on that, you can just type in for a moment what some of the things you experience, and that will help me potentially focus and give some suggestions as well, especially near the end. So if you type them in there, for example, I have dry eyes, I get neck and shoulders, I feel more depressed, I keep waking up, I don't care what it is, headaches, great. Typing them in for a moment, and all you do is remember, you click the chat box, you type it in, and then hit return. Eye pain, neck pain, relating to shoulders, mental fatigue. Yes, it's really often called now Zoom fatigue. It's unfair to Zoom because it's really screen fatigue. Great, neck pain, stiff all over, very familiar to all of us, I think. And so if I shift my screen for a moment, which I will do, and please, if in case I make technological errors and we're making mistakes, you know, we're all just learning how to do this technology, including me. So it does give us permission for that. I'm going to share my screen for a moment. And here I am. And here what you now see is the new book we have just published. So happy. I'm so happy Susan gave me the opportunity to talk today because this morning the book actually got published. Thank you, Susan, to be able to present on the publishing date of this book, which is now available all around the United States. But if I think of that, ideally you want to move more. I took that picture a couple of weeks, maybe 2 months ago. I didn't take it. A friend of mine took it while we were hiking in the hills. And so that is just for fun. And many of us, when we look at the screen, our eyes are just totally exhausted, as you could see. We have to pop them open, or we have neck and shoulder pain. And when you think of all that, then you realize by the end of the day, if I summarize it, but many of you wrote down on your list already, you have exhaustion, neck and shoulder discomfort, eye irritation, back pain, tiredness, kind of an insomnia, or if you watch too much of the screen and watch news, which can be so disturbing, it interferes with our sleep as well. And then some of us become so addicted to the cell phone, especially our children and grandchildren. The moment it occurs, they're looking at it in the middle when we're talking to them. And our attention keeps moving back and forth. We have anxiety and depression at times. And maybe our technology, something really went wrong. We started over here in our evolutionary background, slowly moved over, and now we end up at the computer with our head being almost bigger than our body. And look at this great posture, crunched over, looking intensely at the screen and being fixed for hours. It symbolized in a way what went wrong. And the other part it really symbolizes is that we are so captured by the screen. Maybe not all of us, we can get bored, but especially our children and our grandchildren, they just captivate. They're sitting like this. They're looking and looking and looking. And their whole world, especially now when most of the children are getting educated online, their visual world is from their eyes to the screen. And we now know from the work in Singapore that children who mainly watch screens, by the time they're in high school, 80% are myopic and need glasses. It's a simple one to solve. All you need to do is keep going outside and look at the far distance. So when you're watching the screen, for a moment, close your eyes. Even now, just close them for a moment. And then look for a moment outside the window if that's possible. Slowly let the lids go up and look out. Let me do it in a different way. When you're looking at the screen, close your eyes. Now open your eyes like you're scared. You want to be sure, I wonder what's going on. When we do that, we take a big breath while we open our eyes, at the same time wide. So it's almost like this. And I'm looking. I don't want to miss anything because it's dangerous out there. And when I do that, my eyes are becoming more dry. I can feel it. On the other hand, if I close my eyes and I feel safe, I let my eyes be closed for a moment. Now I breathe. I let the air come in. And then very slowly start exhaling and open my eyes. Halfway through the exhalation softly. Then what I can often experience is a kind of moisture wetting of the eyes, which reduces the eye irritation. Anyway, if all you do is keep looking away from the screen for a moment at the far distance, ideally at something green, it will improve the vision right off. And it's so interesting when I think of our technology. Look at this shift in indigenous cultures. We used to sit around and talk. We were socially connected. And now we have family gatherings like this. This was at Newark Airport. I took the picture. And here, the whole family is sitting, all looking at their own screen and missing that social connection. And social connections is the foundation of health. Or, yeah, look at the Hazard tribe men, how we used to go hunting and gathering. We used to walk and move. And now we sit at the chair and we look and we collapse. Look at their lovely posture, how nice and straight they are. And reaching upward. And look at these collapsed postures as people work. Those make major impacts in our health, and I'll make comments on that. Or we just sit at the desk like this working, and then we frown, we have glare, and we just feel exhausted. Or we look around wherever you go, the new human look is the iPhone neck. And we all look down and look down and look down. When the head is this far forward, as you can see, it is equivalent for the back, for the muscles to carry a weight which is 60 pounds, except you don't know that we are reacting that way. And then we have this massive shift right now. For some, our children have moved back in because for COVID-19. But we used to work together in person, human contact. We all know we miss that so much, at least I do. And that to working more at home alone. And then our children used to be hanging around, but look how they hang around. And now we are just only looking at screens. And remember, think of childhood when you were a little child. You used to play outside. That meant that your eyes and how you looked at the world continually changed. You looked close, you looked far away, you moved, you activated. And when you did that, we get much better integration. For our brain to develop, we do need movement. So you've been sitting for a moment already. Just check how you feel. And I know it's difficult, but for a moment, just get up from your chair or couch and really reach up. Moment, get up, it's hard, just reach up, bring your arm way up, way up, way up, reach up as much as possible. And then you can even put your hands together like this and just make them circles. Just move and move and move and note what happened. Do you feel, when you have done that, did you feel more relaxation? Do you feel a little bit more energy? Do you feel slightly better in mood? If there's a second piece advice I would give for working at the digital screen to avoid Zoom fatigue, put an alarm clock up, put an alarm up, and let it remind you to interrupt and move. It's the most difficult part to do, I can promise, at least for me even. I sit on the couch, starting to watch some form of video on the screen. I start collapsing like a letter C, and then I just sit. And I almost don't want to get up. You know, I just want to stay. And yet, when I do get up and move for a moment, I have an increase in energy and my mood goes up. So if there's one advice I would recommend for each of us, is to really set up a schedule to get up and wiggle. Whether you do your own ways of dancing, just wiggle, roll your shoulders, reach up and look up especially. Look up. It improves our health right away. It's most remarkable. And if you're intrigued in that and you want to have a reminder computer, and I'll put this in the chat box in a moment. I can do this right now. I'll do that. I'll do that in a moment. In the chat box, there's a computer app called Stretch Break, stretchbreak.com. And that app is free. You can install it in the computer and it will pop up every time to remind you to stretch and wiggle. I highly recommend that. And now you can see the difference between us at times and our grandchildren and children. And, you know, when we meet together, we still talk to each other. And look at the difference. When younger people meet and they only look down, there's a loss at times. Okay. And now finally, so many of us sit like this. I wish it wasn't that way. And then we get all the symptoms we report. It's always shocking to me. Ah, that noise you just heard was my reminder. So for a moment, once again, just roll your shoulders. For a moment, look away from the screen. Look up. Ah, look up to the left. Look up to the right. Blink a few times and take a very big breath. And I'll just stop sharing the screen for a moment. And now you can see me again in a different way. I want to just point out how your eyes and neck are connected. Put in your neck just like this, right underneath the skull against the neck. Really feel that. Let them float there And as you're sitting up, the neck is sort of relaxed. Now I'd like you to look with your eyes to the extreme right, and then to the extreme left, right, left, right, left. And what many of you would feel when you do that, you could feel these muscles tightening. When you looked at to the right neck tightened. When you look to the left muscles tighten. Our eyes are connected to our neck. When I move my head forward like this to look at the screen, my neck tightens. I don't know it. That is the most important part. Okay. So let me show us a different slide. And the real question is, why do we get the achiness and at the computer or watching screens or when we are using our mouse? So let me show one of our research study slides, which will illustrate this nicely. Here's a young woman. Age really makes no difference. We see this among young people, all different ages. Here we have someone sitting at the computer, as you could see. The person is typing, sending an email or whatever. Then we can monitor how much muscle tension is in the neck and shoulders. That would be the red line over in the center, and or on the forearm, the green line. And we can even look how their breathing pattern goes. So when the line goes up, they would breathe. When they goes down, they exhale, inhale, exhale. And the number of times it goes up and down here tells you how quickly they're breathing. Now we do just a simple task. You could all do this almost. You drop your hands on your lap. You feel the shoulders sinking, the weight pulled on the elbows. And notice that's how we would start. That's in this first part. The muscle tension is 0. It's very low. And the person is breathing lower. That makes sense. There's no demands on them. Now you ask them just to bring their hands to the keyboard. Just sit there. No work to be done. And look, the muscle tension in the shoulders goes up. The forearm goes up. And the person says there's no difference. They feel just as relaxed. Oops. Where? That there's an increase in tension. Now they have to work. Well, when you work, the muscles have to contract. See this on the forearm? These are the fingers pressing down on the keys or the mouse. It goes up and down. And note how the shoulders are up too. The person isn't just sitting there. They're like this, with their shoulder up, and they are totally unaware of doing this. That's the most critical part. And I want to underline that. When you ask them, they may say, I feel tightness in my forearm. They will definitely not say, I feel tightness in my shoulders. Except by the end of the day, then they're exhausted. And then you can even look and say, when the muscles tighten, if I drew a line across here, the muscles never relax. Never. When they're working. And muscles cannot be held for a long time. That leads to a problem. Let me give you that experience. So as you're sitting on your chair or couch, or wherever you may be, I'd like you to just lift your right knee slightly up. Obviously, if the right knee hurts or the hip hurts, lift the left knee. Lift it slightly up, maybe just about an inch, so the foot leaves the floor. Just hold it up. And did you notice you may have held your breath as you're doing this? Keep breathing while you're holding it up. And you may already start feeling some achiness developing in the hip. That's enough. Let it go. Let the foot and knee go down. Notice we didn't do that much work. We lifted the knee only a tiny bit, yet almost instantaneously, you could start feeling some discomfort. This same process happens in the shoulders. We are less aware of it. And now at the same time about our hip, going back to the hip, we use these same muscles when we walk. And for many of us, unless we have hip or knee problems or ankle problems, we can walk for miles and there is no problem. How come there's no problem when I walk, but I get achiness when I hold it up a little bit? The reason is muscles work best when they tighten and relax. When they tighten and when they relax, the waste products can be taken away and almost fresh nutrients and blood goes through the tissue. That is how our muscles work. And if you look again at this picture here, you realize, she does not, or the person does not relax their muscles. And unknowingly, they are more excited or activated. They're breathing more quickly. I'm exaggerating, but they do. And they forget to blink. And this again is a very normal process. It's really an evolutionary process, because when I look at the screen, you could think this activates our survival mechanisms from earlier times. When we were walking through the savannah and we needed to be aware of friend or foe, we needed to be aware of an animal, a dangerous animal. So we'd be looking to the side and looking back at nearby, looking to the side. And whenever there was something dangerous, we would react. Our brain reacts the same way to the signals on the screen. So here you can see this kind of activation. It doesn't have to be that way. We can learn to breathe lower and slower. We can learn to take breaks. But this is such a common process that occurs. I can show it another way, the final on this same slide, and then you can see it easily. Here's a person working at the computer, our classical head forwards, because we want to look at the screen. I can't quite see it as well. This is a real challenge always when people, when our eyesight becomes slightly more compromised, or we're wearing bifocals or progressive glasses. We tend to want to go to the screen, we crunch our neck, and when we crunch our neck, we increase the probability of headaches, reduce blood flow, etc. And you can just see the difference, how posture makes a difference. In this slide, when the person is head forward, look at the muscles of their neck and shoulders. We measure this with little sensors. It's massively high, except the person is totally unaware of it until it's too late. When they just shift their posture by sitting up, by changing their chair, their muscle tension really is reduced. I'll come back to that later. Let me just go back to me for a moment. Really we forget how that immobility really affects us. It really increases our sitting disease. And COVID-19 especially has increased the sitting disease. Because we forget that our calf muscles are often called a second heart. Namely, as you're sitting, or if you only stand straight, we often can feel how our legs start swelling a bit. We get almost like an edema, blood pools in our legs. That means it puts stress on the heart to get the blood back. When you walk, remember, you push off, you tighten your calf muscles, that squeezes the let me explain. Inside the muscles are veins, which let the blood go back to the heart. And the muscles which squeeze these veins like a pump to bring the blood back to the heart, or the fluids that build up in the legs back to the heart. But when we sit, it doesn't occur. So we really are compromising ourselves while we still get activated by what we see at the screen. We really forget that what we see on the screen is for our physiology and our brain reality. Our brain is or evolved to be able to separate out the scenery on the screen as an imaginary thing. It's real. Till the 20th century, everything we ever saw was real. Now we see the same thing hitting the retina, except it's made up, and our bodies keep reacting. You all know that in a certain way. When you watch a horror movie or have horrible news, or you see someone being killed on the screen, you get this visceral reaction. It's a signal on the screen that says I need to also take control of what I allow the screen to enter my brain. I want to show one or two more slides. And I think this is so relevant for so many of us, as we are tending to sit more on chairs like this, or we sit on a couch like that. This position is really like on the couch. When I sit on the couch to watch television or whatever, I tend to slouch. My spine becomes like a letter C. But look what happens to your body. Your head goes forward. That means much more work on your spine here. And especially we forget that our abdomen, our stomach, as illustrated here as well, is really compressed. That affects our digestion. It may affect our bowel movements. It really affects highly how we breathe, because we now breathe more shallowly in our chest. That puts more strain in our system. It does not allow us to really relax deeply. We again forget that for health and to boost our own immunity, if we breathe lower and slower, that means if during inhalation our stomach can expand, and then very slowly during exhalation, our stomach contracts, and that cycle repeats itself very slowly, which you can see in like little babies who they're breathing. Their stomach moves, not their chest. That allows a support of digestion. It allows support of the blood flow going back to our heart. It really makes a significant improvement. And in this same picture, you can see the knees may be flexed and the blood just pools here, because to get the blood back out of the legs, the calves need to be the pump. It really facilitates it. Let me do one more on this to show at least. And here's that slide when you're looking forward. You can all see this. When your head is way forward, notice how much more the strain is on your back. I would recommend holding it much more up like this. It will reduce the strain. And for the breathing, I think I'll skip these for a moment. At this moment, I'll go back to stop sharing. And I'll just look at you. I want to make a comment about the posture and the breathing. But before doing that, I've been talking too long. Let's wiggle and move. And so for a moment, once again, why don't you just interlace your fingers like this, turn the palms, and then bring the arms up and just go back and forth like you're making a circle. It's as if you're like a flower, a tulip, just going around. And as you then exhale at the same time. And now you can make it even more challenging by putting the palms up and going around again. And I would recommend, for an instant, just get up. I know it's challenging, but just get up, get out of the chair. Notice, feel the impulse not to do this. Feel it's too much work to get up. Overpower that urge. Just say, wait a minute, I'm willing to do an experiment. Just get up, and now for a moment, just tap your feet. One foot on the floor, then the other. One foot on the floor. Or you just lift your legs. What you can do is stand on the ball of the feet. You can hold onto the table or other places to feel balanced. And all you do is you lift your heels, let them come back, lift your heels, let them come back, lift your heels, let them come back. Good. And now just sit. And just shake your whole body for a moment. And let yourself sit again. And for a moment longer, let's bring our attention to our body. So I would like you just to tap your body with your hands. Always be gentle and do it. But just while you're breathing, just take your right hand and tap it on your shoulder and then down the arm. And then your left hand from the shoulder down your right arm. Then both hands from your buttocks, you can pat your own buttocks, down your buttocks, down your legs, down your knees, down your calves, how far you can do it. And one more time, we'll start from the left shoulder, right arm on left shoulder, pat down. Then the left hand on the right shoulder, then both hands on the hips, patting down the thighs. So you can make almost clapping yourself. And then you can even with your fingers just tap your head for a moment. Very nice. And your shoulders, your chest, your stomach. You just put your hands on the stomach and just like there's a drum there. And you can just pat it. Good enough. Now let your hands just be on your lap. And for a moment, notice how the skin feels more tingly, more alive. And if your hands are on your stomach, see for a moment if you can just inhale slowly into the stomach. So the stomach is larger when you inhale. And then very slowly let the air flow out. I'm going to make a sound flowing out, but it really should flow through your nose. And one more breath just like that. And most likely you felt slightly more alert, slightly more alive in the body. And notice all we did is just some movement. But I want to make a comment. I want to shift one more time to posture. It's a piece we have so forgotten about. I know, when I was little, my mother said, don't slouch, stand up straight. And yet, many of us slouch, collapse. We have no idea that that slouch, collapse, not only, it affects both how people see us from the outside, but also what communicates to us. So I want to share some findings we did about slouching versus standing erect. And we can change even our posture at any age. And I think that's the critical part. So when we take students and we ask them or anyone, I've done this with probably literally thousands of people from all age groups, and we just ask them to walk in a slouched way. You know how you can walk outside very much slouched, where you just walk like you don't want, like almost no arm movement, very slow. You walk like that for a minute or two. That's one type of walk. The second walk is where you walk almost like a little kid with a bounce in your hand, and you're reaching up with your arms. So you push off with your ball of the feet and walk. And so you just walk that way for about, a minute. Like you're skipping in place. So it's like slouch, walking very slowly, or skipping in place. What is so impressive when you ask people in controlled studies and you balance these off, that when people walk in slouch walking, they feel their energy just dropping. It sags, it goes down. And if you do skipping walking, after a minute, your energy is up and your mood feels significantly better. Hard to believe, it's true. It doesn't solve the problems, but at least it gives you a tiny bit of control. So when you look up, the world is looking up. You can create the signal to your body. And for people who have a history, but what's most interesting in our studies, our students who had a history of depression over 2 years, when they did slouch walking, they had the biggest drop in energy. Yet when they did the skipping, their energy just went up like everybody else. You could ask, how come? Well, we forget that the position of slouching defensively like this is a biological defense reaction. You can see this in dogs. And if you have dogs, two dogs meet. You have the alpha male or female, its tail goes up, it takes over. And then that's the dominant one. And the other dog becomes submissive. Its tail tucks under, defensive. We are just like that. But what we forget is when we become in this defensive position, we all have had histories like that. When we put our into that, not because we are defensive, but just because we're sitting on the couch, slouching. For our bodies, this is the conditioned cue to evoke those hopeless, helpless, powerless memories. And so you have much more easy access to those. While if you are putting yourself in an upper position, it's easy access to optimistic memories and positive memories. And we have also demonstrated that easily. You know, it's even more interesting than that when we have students do math problems. So these are students who can do all kinds of, some are math majors and some, are theater arts, makes no difference. We just ask them to sit in one position, collapsed, versus way upright and look up. It's nicely balanced. And they just have to do simple math. And when they do that, they report when they slouch, it is more difficult to do the math, as if it's more difficult to do the abstract thinking. And from an evolutionary perspective, that makes sense. Because if I have this defensive position, it means the world is dangerous out there. I don't need to think about the future or the past. I just need to defend myself at this moment. So it's more difficult to do the abstract thinking. Now, how does it apply to us at the computer, watching, sitting? What I have now done is really pragmatic at home. When I sit on the couch, I slouch. I wish I didn't. I do. But now what I do is I take a little rolled up pillow and I put it in my lower back. So I stick my bottom all the way into the couch or the chair, and I have a little pillow in the mid back. So now I'm automatically sitting more up. And once I have done that, and I use that each time, even on my kitchen chair, it works easier. So this is the final components, at least there are many more I can think of, and that is ergonomics, especially as we all work at home. Many of us don't have ergonomists. These are people who adjust your chair, your computer, your workstation to fit you. Most of us use our kitchen table. We may use a dining room table or a desk somehow. And ergonomics is really very interesting. So let me show one slide of that for a moment. The problem of an ergonomics is illustrated by this picture. If you're petite, the table is always too high, your feet cannot touch the floor, you're always ungrounded in a sense, and you have to slouch. And if you're too tall, it also doesn't work. What is so interesting about ergonomics is that there is no perfect solution ever. It's always a compromise. But let me explain. When you get the right chair, which is fit for you, just like remember as a side note, all airplane seats have been designed to optimize for people. If you're 5'6", they're pretty good. If you're 6'2", they're too small. And if you're 5'2", they're also too big. Ergonomics is always individualized. And now think of this. When you get a chair that's right for you, it gives the opportunity to you to sit correctly. It doesn't mean you will, because I can still be stressed. I can still lean forward. I can still have put my glasses being incorrect. However, if I have an incorrect chair, then I have no opportunity to sit correctly. And I also realize in my many years of working with people in my practice that it's challenging to change it. I'll never forget visiting colleagues of mine. I was so lucky to be invited for dinner at their house. I went over. It was my most miserable experience. The food was delicious. There was only one problem. The man was 5 feet and his wife was 4'10". And I am 6'2". What they did when I entered their house, they had adapted the house to them. So I sat on the couch. And when I sat on the couch, my knees literally were almost touching my chin. How come? They had taken the legs off the couch so the couch would be lower. I was in awe of them having done that, to have bought furniture to take the legs off the chair so it fit for them. They had done the same thing with their exquisitely wooden fancy kitchen table. They took off this much of each of the legs. Instead of having the standard height, it was much lower. The same thing for their kitchen counters. It was much lower. And the opposite can be done for people who are very tall. You would want to raise. But we so often think we have no control over that. That is not in our, I buy it, I don't want to change it. I have slowly learned they're an option. What you want to do in ergonomics is adapt the world to yourself, to you, not the other way around. And that is a real challenge. And that couple, for me, just illustrated how perfectly they did. Yes, in their kitchen, I left with black and blue spots on my head because every time I walked around, I would hit something against my head. And for them, it was the perfect house. So I think, to me, That is the critical issue. You see, for myself, I've adapted my ergonomics as well. It doesn't always mean it's the most expensive. Here I have a fairly cheap seat, which goes up and down a little bit. I'm lucky my table can move up and down. I make it go up and down. I often sit on a stool, or sometimes I will just stand. Now you can't see me. And when I do that, and that tells me I need to do a break again. And we can do any one of them. So this time stand up for a moment. Just stand up. I know, and now imagine we're outside. We're in a tropical forest with many, many flowers all around us. And I'd like you to pick each of these flowers. So there's one way high up on the left. Pick that one. Put it in the bush. Hold it up on the right. There one. There's one on the ground. Pick that one up. Oh, there's another one. Pick that one up. Make a lovely bunch of flowers. There's one behind you. Pick that one up. Pick that one up. And now just look at these flowers. Look at the lovely colors. And then for a moment, think of someone you care for. And in your imagination, just give them those flowers. And now I'll let you sit here. We can do many different things. We could have some music playing that would have been better. We could have played drums, whatever. You go back here. In terms of ergonomics, I want to do one recommendation because so many people now use laptops. The sharing for an instant. We use laptops. And laptops are the most difficult device to do correctly. Because if you have the laptop that the keyboard is at the right level, it means you have to look down. If you put the screen at the right level, so it's at the top of your eyebrows, you have to bring your arms up. There's no easy compromise. What I have done and resolved it is by two ways. One, I use an external board, which one can buy keyboards that can split, but it's such as, I don't know if I can show it. There we are. It sort of divides itself. Maybe there we are. You can just amply see it. It's a split keyboard that allows my hands to just be straight instead of arching this way, curling over like this. I can just be natural. I use the external keyboard and then I raise my screen so I can look at it. And the alternative solution, which I highly recommend for most of us, is to buy a bigger screen and plug that in the laptop so we can equally see it. There are many more solutions. We use devices to remind us to sit up, because when I work, I collapse. I now use a device called Upright, which I put on my spine, works on my cell phone. And every time I collapse, it vibrates. It's great, a reminder. But anyway, there are many, many hundred solutions one can do. And I think I want to summarize, possibly, some of the solutions in the following slides. So one, we have to remember that our bodies are the result of evolution. And now we react to the screen because it's really a signal that captures our attention for survival. And the programmers have really designed all the notifications to capture it. We need to learn to turn those off and take breaks. It's critical. And let me give an example for me. I remember as a little kid, when I used to, or younger person, when I visited my parents, their TV was often on. And for me, when the TV is on, my eyes, I have almost no control. I was shocked. I would automatically look at the screen. I would have no control. I still have no control when I used to fly, well, not for this year. When I sit on an airplane seat and the person opens their laptop, I automatically peek. And even on board, I would do that with our cell phones. It wasn't that I'm curious, but it's like an innate survival mechanism. I need to know what the stimuli are for survival. We're all wired like that a bit. Two, So once you know that, you want to say, I need to get rid of those displays, turn off the notifications, have time when they don't occur. 2, do look at your ergonomics. Really think of being able to sit comfortably and with the arms somewhat hanging low, the shoulders relaxed, that the fingers can be on the keyboard. Learn more breathing, check your breathing. Really observe, can I breathe? Am I mainly breathing in my chest? I highly recommend breathing lower in your stomach, as if the balloon, your lungs are a balloon in your stomach. And focus strongly upon inhaling and exhaling through your nose. When you inhale through your nose, it filters, warms, and moistures the air. It really reduces the possibility of infectious disease, because in the nose, the nasal tissue produces a substance called nitric oxide, which acts as an antimicrobial and antiviral, has antimicrobial and antiviral activity. So when you're inhaling through your nose, you are bringing the nitric oxide into the lungs, which protects it slightly more from any viral infections. So for anyone fearful of COVID-19, by definition, learn to only breathe in and out through the nose. We often breathe slower that way. It will be helpful. Okay. We need to do movement breaks. I think the point I made many times, do at least every 15 minutes, do movement breaks. You cannot do enough of them. Often we need to learn stress management. And then, at least if you work, schedule time without interruptions. I would focus on vision care, because so many of us use bifocals or have progressive glasses. And when we have progressive glasses and we look at the screen, we are really looking through a very small window, which the screen is in focus. So we have to fix our neck. I highly recommend to have special classes for those people, which are just for the computer distance, that allows your head to move freely to see the screen. Okay. Fitness is by definition so. The more fitness exercise I can do, the better. Let me go back this way. My error in pressing the wrong button. And then avoid the screen, any screen, television, computers, cell phones, at least 45 minutes before going to bed. Because the light from the screen has a high blue light component that will suppress the natural melatonin that is produced by your body, almost a sleep hormone. So do not watch screens before going to bed. 1, to reduce the melatonin, and 2, to slow down our emotional activation to the news or to the excitement of the video or movie. We want to slowly be mellow and let the lights in the room be more in the orange red color than this very sparkly white. And then keep your cell phones away from your body. I do think there's good evidence that the radiation may not be beneficial. Finally, I would recommend these suggestions and many more. Now I do an unabashed plug for our book, which is really written for the general public. I would highly recommend it for everybody, and especially you, your children, your children, as a way to live, to mobilize your health in this digital age, which we're not going to escape. There are many benefits of it. And so any of you have any questions, I would highly recommend, here's my contact information. You can, much of the information, or some of the concept I also have shared can be found on my blog I have called www.pepperperspective.com. I highly recommend that. And then the free program which I discussed called Stretch Break, it is stretchbreak.com. Well, obviously, if there are questions, please.
Erik, I'll take the first question.
Great.
While others are either writing into the chat room or raising the blue hand. is to, oh dear, my question just flew out of my head. Oh, yes. The question is the following. I get an email from you maybe once a week with tips. A lot of times it's ergonomic tips or, tips related to just healthy living. Is that something that people can still sign up for? Is that an email listserv that is ongoing? I know you've been doing it for 20
No,
years.
thank you. The email tips list we don't do anymore. I mean, that was a great service when email first came about. People loved it. And then there became a point when people get too many emails, you don't want any. So we have stopped producing them, but people can, if you want, I'll gladly send the tips to anybody who wants them, the whole list. I would highly recommend that people would sign up for the Pepper Perspective that has now a blog. That's a blog that also has some of these video inserts. It deals on many different topics. So there have been topics like on acid reflux, the great blog with all references, which I highly recommend for tech stress. And one of the more recent ones I did, which I think is a must for everybody to read, is the one we did on COVID, basically reduce viral load and increase your immune system, increase immune competence, because we are not just victims. If we think about ourselves, we're not in control of our health. I know that, but we can contribute to it. We can optimize it. And the data is quite overwhelming that there are a number of factors that can support the immune system. Because we also know that people who have comorbidities, whether it's diabetes, obesity, heart disease, hypertension, inflammatory disease, are much more at risk. They're the category that's at risk. Those are diseases of lifestyle. They're diseases not always in our control, but luckily there are many things we can do. If I pull up maybe I should just give you the slide of what people can do, if that's useful.
Okay.
Yeah,
if you want to do that. There is one question in the chat room around how often should you, or is it every 30 minutes to set the alarm? Or I think we were doing it every 20 minutes.
Ideally, the more better. There's a paradox which people experience initially. Oh my God, if I do this, I'm going to be interrupting my thoughts. I won't remember. This takes training. I'm very impressed that after a while, most people can in fact do it quite well, and their energy goes up. So the moment you feel a little bit low energy, that is the time to take a walk, to look up. And if you want to feel better, even looking up, put your pictures in your room higher up on the wall. Don't put them on the shelf, it used to be on the counter above the fireplace, which is sort of low. Put them a bit higher, so you have to look up, and then put pictures that evoke into you positive. It's critical to do that.
And so, Erik, when you teach at San Francisco State, do you take those 20-minute breaks?
I absolutely get reminded. I always interrupt my students, just like I did a little bit like this, and we do different exercises in the small seminar class I'll do tomorrow. I'll assign students and they can do different ones, so I learn a new one each time, which I think is much better than me doing it, if that makes sense. Yes, I absolutely do that all the time. I'm always impressed, and it really does work. That's the most impressive part. Well, people's energies really go up.
Well, and I had a headache at the beginning of this session, and I don't have one now. So thank you.
Well, then I'll have to send you my invoice. No. Okay, I have I'll show you 2 slides.
Yes, please.
If I can remember. I'll probably, knowing Erik Peper, that never trust him when he says 2 slides. But I think I'll do it in terms of share. Okay, this comes from our blog, Pepper Perspective. It has links to about 40 or 30 different references, scientific articles, so the data is quite good and highly legitimate, I think. Factors that decrease our immune system, I think is useful to know, because we can modulate that. Chronic stress means stress management. Smoking. Young people who do vaping have 5 to 7 times the incidence of serious COVID, because vaping affects the lungs. Recycled air. The best thing you house for anyone is do not be in a house that has recycled air if you meet other people. Open your windows and doors. If you have an air conditioner, be sure, or a heating system, let the air outside. Fresh air is healing. If you look at the clusters of COVID, they have almost all occurred in conditions where the air is recycled. That means I exhale air in breathing or singing. The other people inhale it and it goes through the air circulation and comes back to me. That's the single best answer I can do. That means for many business buildings, they need to be redesigned. Many business buildings have closed windows and they recycle the air, which makes good sense for economic reasons because the heating is cheaper, cooling is cheaper. It's a disaster for health. All the research data shows if you go outside into the woods where you have a air, this goes right back, in fact, to 1918, 1919, when you looked at the people suffering the Spanish influenza or the Spanish flu, that those who were outside had much better recovery than those who were indoors. And we know that there's an 80% reduction when people have TB, for example, when they're outdoors between patients than indoors. Hopelessness and if you feel lonely, which is very common, especially in COVID, I know it's the hardest thing is to go out and reach out, call your neighbor, whatever, family member, really, and Zoom can be helpful for that. Processed foods, we're so lucky in the Bay Area. We have the history of chez panisse and all this. We don't have to have processed food. Processed foods is our cultural, from my perspective, harm to induce more COVID-19 because processed foods tends to increase inflammation, diabetes, and obesity. And they are the risk factors. So notice processed food is not just our fault that we buy it. It's the only thing that's often available. And so it's a cultural change that must occur. Then we have obviously the ones people already have is obesity and excessive alcohol and sugars. I can give all the references for that. And remember, this is what happens, how the virus gets transmitted. This was in Latvia this fall, although they were not transmitting the virus, hopefully. But here they're vaping. You can imagine that cloud of vaping is when we don't wear a mask. And we have to assume that everybody could be infectious. So when we wear a mask, we're not protecting ourselves. We're doing public service to others. Here's the concept of the mask. As you can see, when we cough with a mask, we spread it. If we wear a mask, the spread is much less. And if you get only a few viral particles, most likely our bodies can cope with that. We may get slightly sick. The other part is that people who get a high dosage at once are much more at risk. If you get a low dosage, you may get COVID, but it tends to be less serious. Okay? And then what can you do? Stress management, whether it's meditation, biofeedback, relaxation, family therapy, I don't care what you do, go dance, but stress therapy, adequate sleep, critical. So keep in mind, turn off all your lights in your house when you go to sleep. There should be no light at all. And if you need light at night to walk around, to avoid tripping or falling, put a red light on because that does not suppress melatonin. Optimism and hope. Think of a positive thought that changes the immune system. I already said social support, physical activity, and connection to nature. We're so lucky, at least I think, that I live in the Bay Area or Berkeley area, Berkeley, Oakland. I can always sort of go up to Tilden and enjoy that. Outdoor nature really improves our immune system. In Japan, it's called forest bathing. Increased air circulation, I've said. Our diet, it really means lots of fruits and veggies. And surprisingly, what is many religious traditions, spiritual traditions, is a fast. It works out that if you do a weekly 16-hour fast, which isn't too bad, it significantly improves immune competence. That means the snacking makes it more harder. And then there's some things you can add to your diet, which are well documented to reduce inflammation. That includes obviously all the lots of colorful fruits and veggies. Turmeric seems to be helpful as an inflammatory, maybe 2,000 milligrams a day. I now drink that, in fact, in the morning. Every morning, I take a half tablespoon of turmeric, put it in warm water, and drink it. When I came across this research, because resveratrol is really from the red wine, maybe a glass of wine would work. Vitamin D, critical. And as we get older, we get often much too little vitamin D. That's sunshine. But about 1,000 to 2,000 units will really help the innate arm of the immune system. Vitamin E, only 200 units, not many. And you have to be careful for those who are taking any kind of blood thinners, because vitamin E also acts as a blood thinner. So talk to your doctor about that. But that enhances the other arm of the immune system. Really helpful. Reduces respiratory infections. A bit of zinc seems to be helpful. And then vitamin C, from my perspective, especially in high dosages, seems to be quite good. I think that's the very quick one I did. I hope that is useful or helpful for people. It's all found in the blog, which we wrote. It's not listed here, on reducing viral load and increasing the immune competence.
Erik, there is a question about acid reflux.
Yes. Acid reflux. The simplest way to think about the factors, obviously. I'm intrigued, what can you possibly do yourself? So let me start simplistically to say, for many people, when they eat and you're going to dinner at friends and there's too much food, you realize that when you're sitting, your belt feels too tight. And then when you loosen your belt, you feel better because you let your stomach expand. Think of acid reflux in a way, the same way. Traditionally, an early treatment of acid reflux, especially at night, tilt the bed, so the head of the bed is higher. Now, during the day, we often have tighter clothing. So if I can learn to relax and widen my abdomen, I inhale, then it means that I reduce the pressure on the stomach. So think about the stomach is in your abdomen. When you tighten the abdomen, it squeezes the stomach. And if the valve on top of the stomach isn't too strong, content of the stomach can start going upward. If on the other I can learn to let this area relax more and widen when I breathe, then that tends to occur much less. And we have had remarkably, especially with our students, that they have had acid reflux for 10, 15 years, that they literally have totally learned to master it and disappear. So very slow lower. So it's really, if I probably cannot show it, but if I stood here, most of us tend to breathe lifting in our chest. I'm exaggerating. You can almost see, if you look at me, if I did that, when I inhaled that way, this part would drop in. And you can especially see it when people talk. I do it again. On the other, and when I do that, I tighten my stomach. But when I tighten my stomach, it squeezes my abdomen. It can't be squeezed. It squeezes my stomach, pushing the juice almost upward. It's a kind of mechanical body. On the other hand, if I feel totally safe and relaxed, I can breathe a bit lower. And now my stomach gets much bigger, not just front ways, also sideways, and my pelvic floor drops. And when I exhale, it slowly goes out. And then next cycle, I do this again. And I would want to breathe like that probably about 6 breaths a minute. So I inhale for the count of 3 or 4. I exhale to the count of 5 or 6. And when I do that, I also bring balance to my autonomic system, sympathetic and parasympathetic system, which also supports the healing. I don't know if that's useful or not. Other questions?
Sounds useful. I don't see any hands up. I would imagine that you're going to get a lot of visitors to your site. And since we're at 4:32, I think 4:34, anything else that you'd like to say in closing?
No, I think I'm very optimistic that we have the possibility of healing. Not healing, but at least giving system support to optimize its own health in the situation. And I think we have more control than we sometimes think. But do it with a smile. And when you're sitting in front of the computer, remember, take breaks, get up, wiggle and move, and smile and reach out to others at the same time. I hope you'll enjoy the book, Tech Stress. It's available anywhere. Probably for many people, Amazon is the quickest, but any independent bookstore or where you buy it. And I would recommend giving it to, you see, it tells me I had to get up and move, and I will do that because I've been conditioned. On that note, Susan, thank you so much for the opportunity to share.
Absolutely, Erik. Thank you for joining us. I think
my pleasure.
We're all healthier as a result of the hour with you.